Morning, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well. So we're starting a new week, and I want to talk to you guys about the next level of Tai Chi. So up to this point, you've been with me for a while now, and if you've been following along, then you've learned a few things. You've learned your standard post training, okay? You've learned your grounding exercise. You've learned a little bit of qigong. You've learned some pieces of the form, okay? You learned some body mechanics along with it, and finally, you learned how to combine those four pieces of the form into a mini form that you can work on at home. Okay, so now I would say that we're in level two. So everything that's gone before this is what I would consider to be foundational exercises. In other words, you shouldn't be watching this video unless you've gone through and watched all the other ones. However, if you're cheating or you like a peek ahead, what we're going to be doing is a lot of layering. And what that means is I teach a concept once and we do basics, and then I return to that concept and we get a little more in depth, and then we return to it again and we get a little more in depth again. So we're going to be focusing on structure for the next few lessons. And one of the big structures that we can use that sort of encapsulates all the principles of Tai Chi is from our post training, our tree training. Okay, so we're going to go over that, but I'm going to show you guys some examples first about what we're talking about. Okay, these are important because I like a visual. I like to have something that helps explain why things are being done a certain way. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is this structure. Okay, so I have a lot of things in place when I say this. I say that I have my elbows relaxed. Okay, I say that I have a little room between my armpits, almost like I'm holding a ping pong ball. Okay, I like to say that my chest is sunken, meaning that there is this sort of curve as opposed to puffing my chest out like this. I like to say my shoulders are rounded and relaxed, which means that they're coming around like this and they're not ramrod straight. Okay. I like to have the natural curve of my spine. Again, I'm not trying to be ramrod straight. I'm not slouching either. My belly's relaxed. Okay. I've got that nice round feeling of a beach ball here. Okay. My hips are tucked forward. What that means is that that buttocks is tucked in. Okay. So that pelvic bowl tips like this and comes forward. And what happens is I sink a little bit to the ground. Okay. Notice that elevator rise. We're going to go over this quite a bit later on. But for now, I just want to give you that basic up and down, that feeling that happens when that butt kicks in and everything settles down. Okay. So from here, this is my tree pose. I'm staring through these open spaces right here, this little open space between my fingers. I have a diffused glance, which is not really focused on anything. I'm just kind of looking off into the distance. Okay. Now this could be very rote. It could be very boring. And people can sit here and stand for, a few minutes and think, God, this is a waste. And why am I really doing this? So I'm going to show you why. Today we're going to go over all the reasons why we're doing this exercise and why it's so important, and also why it contains almost all the principles of Tai Chi. Okay. The big one being the root. And again, we talk about the root when we see a tree on the side of the road, right? We see the top of that tree. We see the top half of that tree. We see the trunk and the branches and the leaves. We do not see the entire root system, which is roughly the size of the tree itself that we can see underneath. So if we look at that whole thing, we get a sphere. And so I want to talk about that spherical aspect of stuff right now. Okay. So one of the best ways to illustrate this is with an umbrella. And actually, I don't have one, unfortunately. So I looked all over the house. I could have sworn I had one. I don't. But an umbrella is a great example because if I open the umbrella like this, I've got this dome, right, that's over the top of me. And the rain comes and it cascades and it bounces off the dome, and if it gathers and pools, it drips off the side, and I stay protected underneath, okay? When I talk about doing this form, when I talk about doing this post-training, okay, that's what I mean. I mean creating this sphere, okay, creating this dome. So it's almost like I pop open an umbrella, okay, and my arms are included in this, okay? My arms are not weak and pressed to my side, okay? They're puffed out. And they're not inflated by muscle. They're inflated by the sense of almost like a beach ball filling with air, okay? So that's where this space underneath the armpits comes from, because I'm opening, I'm expanding. So if you think of your body, the top half of your body, particularly your shoulders and your arms, as this opening umbrella, okay, that opens as the energy that comes in other words, an attack or gravity or any kind of, you know, motion that you're trying to protect yourself from comes in, boom, okay? I have this umbrella that opens. So you want to consider this sort of half dome that's coming down. So I don't have an umbrella, but I do have a bicycle helmet, which is the next best thing. So the idea of this is round, right? And again, we talked about this before. If you look at planets, if you look at atoms, if you look at most structures in nature that are considered to be resilient, the sphere is present all the time. Now this is a sort of a half a sphere, right? So if any impact comes from any point, okay, there's no real hard edges to catch anything on. Everything is designed to flow, okay? It's designed to come just like rain off an umbrella coming down and around to absorb the impact. So instead of the impact happening at one place, it gets dispersed over this whole surface area, okay? So the idea is, I'm ready for trench warfare here, okay? So this is my helmet. So as I put this helmet on, I'm now prepared from all angles. If I get hit on this side, it will bounce this way. If I get hit on this side, it will bounce this way. Forward like this, backward like this. Now there's padding and a suspension system in this to allow for a certain shock, okay, if I get a dead-on hit that can't quite disperse. And your body's designed that way too, okay? That's what your muscles are for. That's what your bones are for. That's what your tendons and your ligaments are for. They're to absorb shock, okay, and to use the ground to help bounce that out. So as force applies, as it comes at me, boom, it gets dispersed. I always joke that I like the analogy of getting shot out of a cannon, right? But that's the idea, right? If I were to be shot out like a missile, I have all the air that I'm rushing through being pushed around this helmet and down to the ground, okay? So when you do your tree pose, I want you to imagine this, or the umbrella, whichever you prefer, okay? Either one is acceptable, okay? But I just want to have that idea of that flow around me, okay? If you stand out in the rain with an umbrella, this concept will drive itself home to you, okay? So that's the first part of the sphere, okay? That's the upper half. What about the lower half? So I have a mixing bowl. Unfortunately, this doesn't have a full round. There's a little bit of a flat you can see at the bottom. Okay, so this isn't 100% round. I don't have a 100% round bowl to show you. But this is a ping pong ball, okay? And the idea is, if this were the bowl of my pelvis, okay, what that means is this area right in here, okay? This is probably from my belt to the sort of the inguinal crease right here, okay? This is considered my groin. The Chinese call it the qua, K-U-A, okay? And the qua is responsible for all our movement, okay? That's the axle from which everything twists, okay? So if I have a dome up top this way, I also have one this way, okay? So if you were to cut my legs off at that crease, you would have a bowl that sits on the floor, okay? At the very center of this bowl is my center of gravity, okay? So what that means is here's my pelvic bowl right here. It's a bowl. And at the very center of that is this sort of imaginary fictional place called our center of gravity. But it is a very tangible place. We can actually feel it, okay? So if I have this bowl like this, okay, and I tilt a certain way, then my center of gravity is going to tilt a certain way. And if I tilt a certain way this way, my center of gravity is going to tilt, okay? And if I tilt this way or this way, so I want you to be able to see this. So this center of gravity, okay, if I tilt my bowl this way, comes this way, comes this way, comes this way, and returns, okay? Most of the time, we have our pelvis tilted like this, okay? When I'm just standing normally, my pelvis is tilted a little bit this way, okay? When I stick that butt out there, when I push that butt out, okay, when I thrust that pelvis out, that bowl evens out, okay? So our center of gravity goes from being on the lip of this bowl right here to being comfortably in the center, okay? So that's a big part of our balance, okay? So that lower part, okay, is actually coming in like a tilt like this and folding down, okay? Also, our low back is stretching out, okay? So our lumbar spine is expanding, which gives us more of a relaxed feeling in our low back, okay? Our thighs take a lot of that weight, and it basically stabilizes this bowl, okay? So, again, these are crude analogies with household things, but it'll definitely illustrate the point. So I want you to imagine a bowl, and a bowl. Okay? Equal together, it comes out to a sphere. Okay? So, I want you to think of that concept of the sphere. Okay? So when I take this position and I stand in this position like this, I have two bowls. The first bowl is up top, from roughly, I would say, the bottom of my ribs up. Okay, and that includes my arms. If I don't have my arms, it's the same thing. If my arms are out in a certain position or I'm working on a piece from the form, okay, it's the same thing. The circumference of the bowl is all dependent on how far my hands go out. Okay, I could be way out like this. That just means the bowl is even wider. Okay, I could also be really in close like this. It just means the bowl becomes tighter. Okay, match with this with a bowl from underneath. Okay, so as I stand like this, every time I bend those knees, every time I tuck that butt in, I'm stabilizing that bowl. I'm evening it up with the bowl on top. Okay, and I'm creating a whole sphere. Okay, in the next lesson, we're going to talk about arches a little bit. Actually, let's just do it now. So while we're on a roll. So you guys get the idea of this spherical sense, this umbrella, okay, with the rain pattering off and from below. Okay, every time I do this, I'm getting that little marble in the center to kind of go where I want it to go. Okay, as I walk, as I move, that center of gravity moves with me. Okay, the best description I can think of, one that I like to think, I wonder if I have anything down here that would work. Maybe in the next lesson, but a pendulum. Okay, you hold a pendulum by a string, and that weight will always find the dead center no matter how you swing the pendulum. Okay, your lower body is like that. Your center of gravity is like that. Okay, so what I want to talk about now is the idea of an arch. Okay, arch is very similar to a dome. Okay, it's the same idea. It's just more two-dimensional as opposed to something that's completely a sphere. Arches are very ancient. You can see them in the Roman aqueducts. It's a very simple shape, used for a lot of bridges and a lot of doorways, because it's a very stable shape. Anything that pushes on that arch, there's equal force that surrounds it. So no part of the arch is greater than the other. It's a very solid structure. It's very good for absorbing weight. You'll see a lot of bridges with the arches. There's a lot of weight that comes down and presses on that arch. And by pressing on the arch, I only make it more firm. Okay? That's our whole idea when we're doing this tree pose. Okay? The arch in this case is here. Okay? It's coming along here. Okay? And there's actually two arches. So this is the first arch. So this is my corner, my what do they call it? The keystone. The keystone's at the very center of the top of the arch. If I take the keystone out, the whole structure collapses. Okay? In this case, it's my quad, it's my pelvis that's the keystone. So I want to imagine this sort of pelvic drop where as I tilt the pelvis forward, that becomes the keystone. It helps inform the rest of this arch. Okay? So when I'm standing in this position, even if I'm not using the arms, I'm creating this archway. And I should be able to feel the structure. Okay. Now I don't want to be crazy bow-legged like this. Okay. There's no reason for that, and that's actually unstable because now my legs are wobbly and my knees are out at a strange angle. Okay. So my feet are facing forward. They might be at a little bit of an angle. Mine tend to be at a little bit of an angle just because I'm naturally bow-legged a little bit. Okay. And then I bend those knees. Bending those knees opens that arch out a little bit. Okay. Then I tilt that pelvis in. Now I have this arch structure. Okay, and I can test that. I should be able to press on these thighs. I should be able to press down, and I don't want to feel this. I don't want to feel a buckling. Okay, I want to feel just like the umbrella that all the force is being directed down and around me. Okay, the second arch is not as easy to see or to visualize, but once you get the idea of it, you'll see it's the same. And that second arch is right here. Okay, and those shoulders, that includes your pectoral group and your shoulder blade or your shoulder area. Okay, all that hangs off the side of the arch. Okay, the arch itself. Now this is an invisible arch. Your bone structure isn't quite the same, but sort of between the collarbones, right here, this little notch. This is the cornerstone, or this is the keystone. Okay, and from here, the arch comes down to about the bottom of the ribs. Okay, so when I come out like this, okay, I have a second arch that's formed. Okay, these hands, they don't collapse, they stay. That structure comes down into the ground, and that's one of the most important exercises. We're going to do it next. It's a grounding exercise, which will kind of help bring this concept even more home to you. Okay, so again, I have this second arch. If something pushes at me like this, okay, I'm pushed into the ground. I'm not going to collapse. I'm not going to lose my balance, okay, because I have one arch that supports me this way, okay, and I have another arch that supports me this way, okay. So I want you to get that idea of those two arches and how strong that structure is. And also, when you walk, I want you to think about these two keystones, okay, this one right here at the notch and this one right here. Probably if you press right here, you'll feel your pubic bone, okay. So both right in here. As I walk, as I move, those are the keystones supporting both arches. Now those arches aren't just two-dimensional, okay? The arch comes this way, okay? And it comes this way. And if I look at the arch in all those dimensions, I'm coming back to my bowl, okay? If I look at my bowl head on, I have an arch, okay? If I add the rest of the dimensions to it, I have something that's more akin to a helmet or a bowl, okay? So again, these concepts are sort of simple, and they might seem almost arbitrary, but they're very vital to the understanding of why Tai Chi is structured the way it is and why that structure differs from any other physical exercise, okay? So when we come back, I'm going to show you a grounding exercise, and we'll go from there.